Nearly 6 million ounces of gold came out of white rock. One mine, the Empire, up at Grass Valley in California, chasing quartz veins through the hills there for the better part of a century. Not a creek, not a bench, rock. And you have picked up that same white rock, probably 50 times this year already, turned it over in your hand and and thrown it back in the water. I know why you threw it. It looked like all the others. Clean, bright, boring. And here's the part nobody tells a new man, or a man who has been at this 20 years and still gets skunked. White quartz is not the signal. Quartz is everywhere. Reading which quartz is the rare skill, and almost nobody teaches it because it takes longer than saying gold is found in quartz and moving on. So today, I am going to give you 5 things to look for on a piece of white rock before you decide whether it comes home with you. What each one actually means, where in the creek and on the hillside to hunt for the pieces that carry them, the hand checks you can run in 5 seconds with no tools, and what a good specimen is honestly worth if you find one. The 5th one is last for a reason. It has cost men more gold than the other 4 put together, and most of you have already thrown it away this season without knowing it. Before I get going, I want to know how much white quartz is sitting in your garage. Here is the mechanism, and once you have it, the 5 signs stop being a list you memorize and start being obvious. Quartz veins form when hot water, loaded with dissolved silica and metals, gets pushed up through cracks in the crust. That water is under enormous pressure down deep. As it rises and the crack opens, the pressure drops. The fluid flashes and boils, and everything it was carrying has to come out of solution fast. Silica drops out as quartz. Gold drops out too, along with sulfides, which is the family of minerals that includes pyrite and its relatives, the ones with sulfur in them. Now the important part. If that happened once, in one clean flush, you get a big fat body of milky white quartz with nothing in it. One event, one dump of silica, no repeated boiling, no sulfides. Prospectors have called that bull quartz for 150 years, and it is the loudest rock in any creek in America. Bright, chunky, easy to spot from 30 feet away. It pays nothing, and it is the single biggest thief of time in this hobby. But when a fault opens and closes over and over, and the fluid pulses through it dozens of times across thousands of years, each pulse adds a thin layer and each pressure drop drops more metal. That vein ends up layered, seamed, stained, full of holes, and ugly. Ugly is the tell. Everything I am about to show you is a different way of spotting a rock that had many events in it instead of one. So when you pick up a white rock, you are not asking, is this quartz? You are asking, how many times did this thing get cooked? Let me show you how to answer that with your hands. The first thing I look at is rust, and specifically what kind of rust. Iron staining on quartz gets dismissed constantly because folks think it is just dirt, just weathering, just the creek being the creek. Sometimes it is, but the stain you want is orange to red-brown, and it is not sitting on the rock. It is soaked into it, going down maybe 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch, about the thickness of a stack of 3/4. Turn the piece over and look at a broken face. If the color runs into the white, that iron came from in the mine. What happened is those sulfides I mentioned rotted. Pyrite and its cousins are unstable at the surface, and over a few thousand years of rain and air, they oxidize away and leave iron oxide behind, and they leave holes where the crystals used to be. That is why gold-bearing quartz so often looks like a rusty sponge. You will see little square and rectangular pits, sometimes a honeycomb of them. Miners call that boxwork, and it is just the empty molds of the sulfide crystals that dissolved. Those pits are your evidence that this rock once carried metal, not just silica. The gold does not usually rot away with the sulfides. It stays, often as fine specks along the walls of those pits, and often driven a little deeper into the seams. This is the reason old-timers were suspicious of any quartz that came out of the ground too clean. On the ground, do not just look in the water. Quartz float, meaning loose pieces broken off a vein and moved downhill, sits on the slope above the creek. Walk the hillside on the uphill side of your bar and look for angular white chunks in the dirt, not rounded ones. Angular means it has not traveled far, which means the vein it came from is close, usually within a couple hundred yards uphill. Rounded and polished means it has been in moving water for miles and the vein could be anywhere. The mistake I made for 2 solid seasons was the exact opposite of all this. I hauled home clean white quartz because it looked like the pictures. My wife will tell you there were about 140 pounds of it stacked along the garage wall, and I paid a lab $40 a sample to run 6 of the prettiest ones. $300, give or take, and every single one came back essentially nothing. The rusty pieces I had left in the tailings pile that same summer are still up there. One fist-sized rusty piece did make it into my pack that year, almost by accident, and I will tell you what was in it a little later because it turned out to be the most important rock I've ever picked up. Rust gets you interested. What comes next tells you whether the vein was worked over once or 100 times. Second sign, and this one you cannot see until you break the rock. You need a fresh face. Carry a 2-pound crack hammer and I hit the piece square, and then I look at the inside for banding. Not color banding like agate. I mean thin parallel layers, gray or dark green or almost black, running through the white like ribbons. A 1/16 of an inch up to a 1/4 inch each, the thickness of a dime up to a stack of quarters again, and often a dozen or more of them stacked side by side. That structure is called ribbon quartz, and every one of those dark lines is a separate event. The crack opened, fluid rushed in, quartz sealed it, the crack broke again along the same weakness, and a little wall rock and sulfide got trapped between the layers. 20 ribbons means 20 pressure drops in the same channel. 20 chances for gold to come out of solution in the same square foot of rock. I have found more visible gold on ribboned faces than on any other texture by a wide margin. And this is where I part ways with a lot of what gets said in this hobby. Everybody repeats that gold-bearing quartz is milky white with gold showing in it. On the ground I have worked, the productive stuff is gray, streaky, and half the time you would call it dirty. The picture-perfect white specimen with a gold seam through it is real, but it is the exception. And using it as your mental template is how you spend 3 seasons carrying the wrong rocks home. In the creek, look at the bedrock exposures where the water has scoured the bottom clean. If a vein crosses the channel, you will see a white band cutting through the darker country rock, and you should get down on your knees and study whether that band is solid white or laminated. Break a piece off the shoulder of it where it is already fractured, not the middle. And check the first fast water immediately below that crossing, because whatever eroded out of the vein went downstream and dropped in, the first place the current slowed. The beginner's mistake here is judging a rock by its outside. The outside has been weathered, tumbled, and coated for a long time. The inside is the only honest surface on the rock. If you are not breaking 2 or 3 pieces per trip, you are guessing. Quick pause here because everything I just walked through, and dozens more tricks like it, is inside the Gold Prospector's Bible, 2026 edition. 50 field-tested tricks to stop getting skunked, laid out plain. Right now it comes with the 30-day skunk-proof roadmap completely free. A 4-week step-by-step plan to pick your ground, test smarter, and find your first real color. Link in the description, QR code on your screen. This is the season you stop guessing where the gold is. Now, what does a hole in a rock actually tell you? Most men see a piece of quartz with cavities in it and read it as rotten, weak junk. It is the opposite. An open cavity in a vein is called a vug, and it means that at some point that crack was wide open with fluid moving through empty space. Open space is where pressure drops hardest, and pressure dropping hard is exactly what makes gold come out of solution. Look for cavities from pea-sized up to about the size of your thumb. The good ones are lined with small, clear or milky quartz crystals with sharp points growing inward from the walls. That crystal lining tells you the fluid sat there long enough to grow crystals instead of just freezing solid. Wet the rock, get it in direct sun, and go over the inside of those cavities with a 10-power hand lens. Golden vugs is frequently crystalline, and it hides in the corners between the crystal faces, so tilt the rock slowly rather than staring at it straight on. I do not know why some vuggy pieces from a single vein run rich and the piece next to them runs nothing. I have crushed and panned material from the same 3-foot span of a vein and had one bag give me a nice tail of fine gold, and the next bag give me sand. Something about the plumbing of that vein was uneven, and I have never worked it out. What I do know is what kept showing in the pan across years of doing it. The vuggy, holy material outproduced the solid material on that ground consistently, and it was not close. Where the crystals matter most is downstream from a known vein outcrop. Gold that weathered out of vugs is often coarse and irregular, which means it does not travel far. Work the bedrock cracks in the first 100 yards below the outcrop and clean them out properly. Down to true bedrock, not to the false floor of packed gravel 18 inches up, about the depth of a 5-gallon bucket. That packed layer fools people constantly. I know what you are thinking right now, and you are not wrong to think it. You cannot break every white rock in the creek. You would be there until dark and you would have a sore arm. That is exactly why the next sign matters, because it lets you sort a pile of rocks in about 2 seconds each without swinging anything. Weight. Pure quartz has a density of about 2.65, meaning it weighs 2.5 times the same volume of water. Gold is 19.3. Sulfides sit in the middle, around 5. So, a rock that is heavier than it looks is a rock with something in it besides silica every single time. And your hand is a better instrument for this than you would believe. Do this. Pick up 2 pieces of similar size, one in each hand, and just hold them level. Do not think about it. Your arms will tell you inside 2 seconds if one is off. A grapefruit-sized chunk of clean quartz runs right around 3 pounds. If a piece that size feels like 4 or 5, something is riding in there. It might be pyrite, it might be iron oxide, it might be gold. All 3 mean the vein carried metal, and all 3 mean that rock is worth breaking. This is the check that kills the imposter. Clean white bull quartz is light, slick, and glassy. And when you run your thumb across it, there is no bite, no pit, no stain, no dark seam. Light and smooth means drop it and keep walking. That 5-second comparison has saved me more hours than any piece of gear I have ever bought. And if you do find gold in a piece and you are wondering what it is worth, understand that specimen gold is not sold by melt value. Collectors pay for the look of it. I have watched palm-sized pieces with good visible gold and white quartz sell for 2 and 3 times the value of the metal actually in them, sometimes more if the crystals are sharp. So do not take a hammer to a nice specimen to free up a 1/4 gram. You will destroy the more valuable half of the rock. Now let me tell you about a rock that had no business paying anything. In 1989, down in Sonora, Mexico, a man working desert ground with an entry-level metal detector, the kind of machine plenty of you have in the closet, got a signal on ground that had been prospected over for generations. What came out weighed around 38 pounds. They call it the Boot of Cortez, and it is the largest nugget ever documented in the Western Hemisphere. Not found by an expert, not found on virgin ground. Found because a man went over ground everybody had already dismissed, with cheap gear paying attention. That story matters here for one reason. The ground was not picked clean. The reading of the ground was wrong. Same thing is happening on your creek with white rock right now, and it happens because of what I am about to show you last. Most men do exactly this. They find a good chunk of quartz with something interesting in it and they trim it down. They knock off the dirty edge, the crumbly greenish stuff, the dark rind on one side, until they are left with a clean, handsome white specimen for the shelf. And they just threw the gold in the tailings. The edge of a vein where it meets the surrounding rock is called the selvage, and it is the highest grade real estate in the whole system. That contact is where the fluid pressure changed most sharply, where the chemistry of the vein met the chemistry of the host rock, and where sulfides and gold concentrated hardest. You will know it by sight. The white goes greenish or gray over the last half inch. Sometimes there is a soft clay-like seam, and the wall rock next to it is often bleached or altered looking compared to the country rock 10 feet away. It looks damaged. It looks like the worst part of the rock. So when you break a piece off a vein in the creek bedrock, take it from the wall, not the middle, and keep 1 to 3 inches of the dark host rock attached. When you find quartz cobbles in the gravel with a dark rind still stuck on one side, those are the keepers. And if you are running material through a crusher, Crush the edges separately from the core and pan them separately. You will see the difference in the pan and you will never do it any other way again. That fist-sized rusty piece I mentioned earlier, the one I nearly left in the tailings, when I finally got around to breaking it, the white core had nothing. The gold, and it was a good showing of it, was in a band along the dark edge, less than half an inch wide, right where the vein had met the wall rock. I had been throwing that exact part of the rock away for years. That one rock, honestly, changed how I read every specimen since. Now here's where all 5 of these signs fall apart, and you need to hear it. In glaciated country, up across the northern tier, quartz gets hauled tens of miles from its source and dumped in ground that has no vein anywhere near it. Reading float there will walk you in circles. It also fails in regions with big barren regional quartz belts where the veins formed from one massive silica flush and there is no metal in the district at all, no matter how the rock looks. And it fails in high water, plain and simple, because you cannot see or reach bedrock exposures and you will be judging rounded cobbles that have traveled from nobody knows where. In those conditions, I stop rock hunting and go back to sampling gravel, working benches 4 feet above the summer waterline, about chest height on a man, where the old high water deposits sit. If you have kept a rusty piece like that, I'll want to know. So here's what you can do now that you could not do 20 minutes ago. You can pick up a white rock and read whether it was made in 1 event or 100. You can find the rust that came from inside instead of outside, see the ribbons on a fresh break, spot the vugs that mark where the fluid boiled, weigh 2 rocks against each other in your bare hands, and above all, keep the ugly edge that everybody else knocks off and leaves behind. You can walk uphill from the creek and tell angular float from traveled float, and know roughly how far you are from the source. None of that requires new gear. It requires that you stop trusting the brightest rock in the creek, because bright and clean is the one thing that reliably means nothing. If you want more of this kind of reading, stick with the channel, because next I want to get into how to trace float uphill to the vein it fell off of, which is a skill that has made a handful of men very quiet and very wealthy. Next time you walk a bank, you do not want to be the one who stepped over a fortune and kept going. Break the ugly ones. Keep the edges. Good luck out there, gold hunter.